the errors people make due to religious beliefs are worse than other false beliefs because people have ingrained erroneous religious beliefs in people through indoctrination, through threats of hell, or fears that they'll be a bad person if they don't believe this or stay loyal to this tradition. And so, having been religious myself, extremely devoutly Christian, up and through college, and going to a very conservative Christian college, and I really feel like to be lied to about your body and your ethics and the nature of reality itself. That's not a minor issue. It's a really serious problem, and I think in that context, it's important that people live their lives according to reason, and that even if it does make some people less happy, that's part of the consequences of at least having the autonomy to be able to run their own lives according to what's actually real. And I think that if we could get past so much religious dogma, in the way, there is a tremendous amount of secular scholarship and great thinking about ethics, and lots of ways to make sense of the meaning of life that are in accord with the truth about reality, and not having to be just one last thing on like for example, I went to a funeral, and it was a Catholic funeral. And here I was, here you're trying to mourn someone. You're trying to cope with the reality of death. And from the priest, it's like most of the ceremony was about how death isn't real. Basically, oh no, don't worry, they're still alive. And I feel like that sort of an attempt to shirk reality is not sweet. It's not just some tragic thing humans are going to have to always do. I think it's a failure of courage. It's a failure of honesty, and it's a failure of moral imagination that we cannot come to terms with. To say that humans are just incapable of dealing with truth. I think there are ways to deal with the truth and not run from it and deny it when you're faced with it. And so for those reasons. Not because I think religion always is on the side of evil or that it's always a source of violence or anything. Although I am, of course, concerned about religious privilege and things that are evil that get a free pass because it's religion, or people going easy on evil practices or questionable things because it's religion. Serious problems with that. But it's not because I think religion is the root of all evil in humanity. I just think it's in the way of people taking ownership and autonomously to really reason out and hold themselves and others accountable to have reasons for all their values.
And I was wondering at some point if I would ever get you really going. We finally found a way.
Yeah.
Well, it was
Star Wars comes close.
Yeah. It's all good. Well, as you were talking about some of that stuff, I started thinking about, what I'm going to have to ask him about. And it proves apparently that you're partly psychic. This deconversion thing, because you were quite religious, right? You were taking it pretty darn serious. What led you out? What caused that to change?
So I was really very devout. When I was a kid, when I was about 8 or 9, my brothers kind of went in these two different paths in life. One became an alcoholic, and he got a girl pregnant very young, and my other brother was, going to Bible college when he had reading problems, and he was never supposed to be able to make anything of himself, and he winds up, going to college and getting married and being very happy, and I kind of had at a very young age this sort of, oh no, these two paths diverging. And so I became very religious and, in the footsteps of my minister brother. And so I was just really, really serious about it. And I thought this was the way to the good life, because look, here's my brothers at 13, that makes sense,
Yeah, it does.
And so I was just really, really committed. And I spent all of high school trying to spread the gospel. And, I went to one of the most conservative Christian colleges in the country, Grove City College. And I think it was just that from very young, I was very well. I had a youth minister who gave me one-on-one discipleship. He had small group and then one-on-one. He would answer all my questions and he like all my theological queries, and he really developed that theologically searching side of me so that by the time I came to college, I was really ready to dive into theological, and then it turned out philosophical matters. And then studying philosophy, I thought, well, this will be just sort of a way to work out those philosophical questions that non-believers have and answer them finally. And then I can move on and just do theology. And after a couple of years, I wasn't ready to move on. I had really, through such vigorous study of the philosophical problems with my faith, I realized that it was false and I had to move on. And one of my friends was gay, and I came very close to disowning him, and he became, right around when he became suicidal, and I realized that this was extremely destructive, the potential of beliefs that I didn't know were true, that could lead me to, treat my friend in a way that wasn't helpful to him when he was in dire need. And I felt really bad about that and realized the real seriousness of what's wrong with believing, without really rigorously knowing you have good justification. And so I became a philosopher instead of a theologian, and very passionate about these sorts of, helping other people who are on their way out of faith to be able to understand that all these questions that they've had, they were right to ask about that stuff in church. The church really didn't have the right answers, but there are philosophical ways that now they can think for themselves. And I'm not going to give you a bunch of answers on a plate. We're going to think together. And I really love now as a blogger being able to write, my favorite people to write for, the people right on that transition out, who really need the validation that it's not them that's crazy. The church is lying to them. They're not the ones that are crazy. It really is. They really have good arguments, and they are right. And they want to build a constructive view of philosophy and ethics. And I feel like I'm the guy to help them do that. And a lot of them, sometimes they want to study philosophy of religion, to go over the arguments in a rigorous way. And we read the best people out there from the theist side, the atheist side. And it goes all the way back for me, this sort of teaching goes back to being discipled, by my youth minister when I was 14. That sort of mentorship, that sort of guided, being able to learn with a teacher who really takes an invested interest in you. I learned how to do that from him, and he was an enormous positive influence on me, even though I had to outgrow him and the faith he taught me. And I've had good teachers like that, and that's why it's really wonderful to do these online classes, to bring it back to a plug at the end, because it really is to be able to that kind of teaching. It's that real connection where the student is at the center, and it really is they're able to really work through it, their thinking with the teacher, really responding to that and the material shaping around that. Because when you study on your own, you might think, you read an article, you go, oh yeah, I see what's wrong with that, and you just dismiss it. But then, it's really important to have a teacher there who can go, no, let's really dig in here and open up things you didn't even see in the text you could read on your own. But that's just really the joy of it. And so, I love teaching everybody. A lot of my stuff has nothing to do with religion. But it is especially nice when there are people who are coming out of religion and really discovering philosophy as a replacement. It's a really wonderful thing.
Absolutely, and I love those stories. And the thing that you didn't get to, because I'm looking at your blog here, and you have your deconversion page.
Yeah.
And you have a photo, and it talks about something about you decisively completed your deconversion. So what was the decisiveness? What was was there an event, a moment that you knew?
Yeah. I was an evangelical, and it's funny because when you're an evangelical, you grow up with everybody having a testimony of how they come to Jesus, and there's
right.
like a moment, like people want to have these moments in which they saw the light, And so I never had a good one because I really grew up in the faith. Some Christians invent crazy stories just so they can sound like they have a good testimony. That's why we even have a presidential candidate running around making up stories that he shot people or something, because he wants to.
And then we have another one talking about 2 Corinthians.
No, not him.
Yeah.
But Ben Carson, making up these. You're talking about Trump.
Yeah, 2 Corinthians.
It's hard to keep Republican candidates who are bragging about crimes they could get straight right now. But no, so what winds up happening is, so a lot of Christians want a good story. I never had one because I didn't really convert into the faith. I was really raised in it. I followed my brother's footsteps. But what happened was when I left, it was very much, I was too serious about it. It was too much of my life and my identity to ever be a day where it was like, oh, am I a Christian? I don't know what, I mean, maybe people do transition. I don't mean to judge anyone else. They have a different journey. But in my case, it was like, I couldn't just go, I had to know, am I a Christian or not? And I had spent I'd spent about 6 months reading Nietzsche. Well, I spent 10 really important days in May, and then like a couple months in the fall, or at least October. Actually, spent all of October reading Nietzsche, and I was and it was really, really just eroding all my defenses of faith and everything I'd known from philosophy. Nietzsche gave the emotional punch. There was plenty of philosophical reasons to not believe. Nietzsche was the one who kind of gave an emotional push, and then one day I was just flipping through my Nietzsche, and there was a section he has in the Antichrist, section 50, where he says that that some people take the fact that faith makes you happy as a proof, and Nietzsche says it's practically a proof of falsehood if something makes you happy, which I think is an overcorrection. But he does, but his point is that we have to be really principled and have an intellectual conscience about these things, and be rigorous. And I realized from reading that, I read that text a couple times, and I'd already read it before, but I read it again, and it just sunk in that I'm really on the side of truth here, and that means I've got to move on here. And so that was it. I went to my friend, and I started talking to him and going over my doubts, and he understood. And then, by the next day I was basically telling people, I don't believe anymore.
Well, just like that. I know my son has been able to relay the story that when he finished Julius Sweeney's Letting Go of God 2-hour monologue, when it was over, he said, "Oh, I had doubts for years, but now I know it's crap." And that was the straw that kind of broke the camel's back to bring it back full circle.
Yeah.
So we've got the blog, Camels with Hammers. We've got the classes. And are you on Twitter, Facebook, any of those other places?
Yeah. I love Facebook friends. Please, by all means, I accept everybody. Just my name, Dan Fincke, at the end of it, or search me on Facebook. I'm on Twitter as Camels Hammers. And I just tweet my stuff, though. I don't really interact much. And the blog is Camels with Hammers. And to sign up or find out information, just email me at camelswithhammers@gmail.com.
Great, Dan. Well, thank you so much for having a fun conversation with me at the Phil Ferguson Show. I appreciate it.
I'm so happy. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
All right, bye-bye.
You're listening to the Phil Ferguson Show on Secular Media Network.
All right, everybody. This is Phil Ferguson, and, of course, this is the Phil Ferguson Show. Thank you for hanging on. Sorry if the show was a little longer than normal, but we had a lot of great stuff to go into. Just keep it in mind. If you want to hear about when and where conferences are, I want this podcast to be a place for you to go to come find out that information. You just heard about SashaCon. It's just northwest of St. Louis, Missouri, in Columbia. Go check that out if you're in the area. And, of course, Thomas told us about Gateway to Reason 2 in the middle of the summer. A couple of things coming up here. The first weekend of March 2016, just a few weeks from now, if you're getting the show in real time, is going to be in Nashville, Tennessee. And I'm going to be there, so go check that out. Google Nashville Atheists, and you can probably find it. If you get stuck, of course, email me, phil@polarisfinancialplanning.com. We've also got a couple of events in April. In early April, I will be in Fayetteville, Arkansas for Logicon. It's a regular conference they have in Northwest Arkansas. It's going to be a nice, big, fun show. And, of course, I'm a sponsor there, and I will have a table, and I'm a speaker there. That is LogicCon, LOGICON. And just 1 week later, and I'm expecting at this point to be there, but I haven't confirmed it yet. But if I'm not there, you can still go.
It's in Madison, Wisconsin. It's the Free Thought Festival. It's happened every year. It is a wonderful, wonderful conference put on by students and community